The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 27.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Thank you for joining us on the EL. Today we have Warren Berger, author of A More Beautiful Question. Welcome, Warren, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Hi, Wade. It's good to be here.
Great. Will you take just a moment to introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you personally?
Yeah, I'm a longtime journalist and author. You used to write for the New York Times and for a long time wrote for Wired magazine. And now I write for Fast Company, Harvard Business Review, some other publications like that. Along the way, I've written several books. And the last couple of books have had to do with innovation and design thinking, that kind of strain of innovation. And then the most recent book is I kind of moved from design thinking into questioning, which is really a big part of innovation and design thinking. And so I have my book, A More Beautiful Question, is just focused on that aspect of innovation.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Now let's do just that. Let's jump into your book, A More Beautiful Question, which was made available for purchase back in March 4th, 2014. And Warren, we're going to move pretty quickly, but we're gonna go through some top questions that our listeners/readers would love to get answered. And just to start off, the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing this book?
The inspiration was that I was studying a lot of entrepreneurs and innovators and business leaders. I was doing this for an earlier book, which was all about design and innovation. And one of the things I noticed was I was looking for, as an author, when you're studying a phenomenon, you're looking for common threads, things that link everything together. And I was looking at a lot of these sort of innovative, creative types of people and looking at what it is what they seem to have in common as they're going about coming up with great ideas and great businesses, that sort of thing. And one of the things that really stood out to me was questioning. I found that a lot of great innovators and great business thinkers start with great questions. They're asking the questions that nobody else is asking, and that kind of leads them toward new opportunities. And they work on those questions and answer them. Eventually, if they can answer those great questions, they've got a great startup, or they've got a great product, or what have you. So that was kind of the inspiration, was just seeing how many people that I admired were great questioners, and then saying, well, this looks like something worth exploring. What is it about questioning, and why is it so powerful, and why are some people better at it than others?
Great. So Warren, help us understand, what makes your book different from others regarding the same topic?
Well, there are a number of books on questioning, but I would say not too many have positioned it directly in terms of innovation. There are books on questioning and why if you ask good questions, you can be a good conversationalist, or why you should know how to ask good questions on a job interview, or know how to ask questions about your life, maybe. So I felt like I was the first one, or am the first one, to really position this in terms of innovation and business, to look at the relationship between asking great questions and coming up with great business ideas. And I did that in great detail in the book. I mean, I traced there's a lot of stories in the book of innovations and startups and companies like Netflix, and Square and Airbnb, and older companies too, like Polaroid. And just looking at the way that they used, the way that questioning played such a significant role in helping the founders of the company, establish the business and come up with great ideas and then come up with great products. So that was really kind of, that was kind of what I focused on. And I think I'm the first one to do it. I mean, I don't think anyone has really, that I'm aware of, has traced the role of questioning in all of these business breakthroughs and innovations through the years.
How would you want the reader to engage with your book? Is this the kind of book that you want them to start from beginning and read straight through, or is this more like a resource that they can kind of come back to?
I think both. I think, it's good to read in its entirety in a way, because it gives you a full appreciation of the significance of questioning, historically and in business, and also, it gets into a lot of the techniques of questioning and how you can get better at asking the kind of questions that can help you innovate. So I think looking at it holistically, you kind of get a sense of how it all fits together. But I also think it's a book you can go back to, for some of the more practical tips, and strategies that are offered in the book. One of the things the book has is it kind of lays out a framework of how you can use questioning. You can sort of progress through certain types of questioning in order to get to better ideas, better products, innovations, that kind of thing. So I think there's very practical strategies in it that you may want to go back to and look at, over time.
Okay, great. Now that we know the background behind the book and a little bit about what it's about, let's take a deep dive. And this is just an opportunity for you to give us a great summary of what your book is all about, and really just give the reader, I guess the future reader, a great summary of what they can expect.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the title is A More Beautiful Question, and the subtitle of the book is The Power of Inquiry to Spark Breakthrough Ideas. So I kind of put that out there at the beginning of the book, and the book starts it starts with the first section of just making the case to the reader of why questioning is so important and why it's such a critical part of innovation and change. And I kind of lay out a lot of evidence and a lot of stories and anecdotes, and just sort of giving people the rationale behind this book. Why is questioning so important? Why should someone care? Why should someone pay attention to that? And a lot of people say, well, I know how to ask questions. Why would I need a book? So I kind of lay that out in the first section of the book and tell you, this is why it's important. This is why, even though you may think of yourself as a good questioner, you probably are not as good as you could be at asking great questions, and you can get better at it. And the people who are really innovating in the business world today are great questioners. So I kind of lay all that out at the beginning in that first section, which is called The Power of Inquiry. And, once I kind of make the case about why questioning is so important, then in the second section of the book, I do something interesting. I kind of step back, and I kind of say, well, what is it about questioning in terms of human beings? Why is it that we start out asking so many questions when we're kids? Because everyone knows that, right? That the typical 4-year-old or 5-year-old just asks a lot of questions, right? And then we tend to ask less questions as we get older. So that became the second section of the book, to just explore that whole idea that there's a great questioner inside all of us, but over time we may have gotten out of the habit of asking questions. And there's all kinds of reasons for that, which it's very interesting. I mean, that all gets laid out in that second section of the book. I talk a little bit about our education system, which really does not teach or encourage questioning by students. We have an education system that's very answers based. It's about memorizing the answers, and so we really get out of the habit of asking questions, especially original questions and imaginative questions, the kind of questions which are really valuable. So I think that section kind of lays all that out there, and that second section has been very popular in the education world. It's been surprising, even though this is primarily a business book. That second section, because it talks about education and it talks about what happens to our questioning skills as we go through school and get older, it has really resonated with teachers and educators, and a lot of them are contacting me and saying, this is a big issue in our schools, and we know that we have to do a better job of encouraging questioning in kids. And so it's been a very interesting thing, the reaction to that section of the book. But anyway, you get through that section, and so the point of that is, we've lost some of our questioning skills along the way. So what do we do? What can we do to kind of get better at questioning? And that's where I go into the third section of the book, which lays out my own kind of system of questioning, which is the why, what if, and how way of thinking about questioning. And it's pretty, it goes pretty deep in terms of showing you the power of each of those kinds of questions: why questions, what if questions, and how questions. They're different. They have a different power, and they do different things, and they have an interesting relationship with each other. And so I explain in that section, why it's so important to get good at asking why questions. When you look at the world around you, you look at your business, you look at the way you've been doing things for the last 10 years, you look at processes, policies, products, whatever. You need to be able to look at things and ask why in an intelligent way. Why is this business not performing as well as it might? Why do people out there have a need for this particular thing and yet no one has delivered it yet? So those kinds of why questions are really important. And then I talk about what if questions in terms of, those are the kind of questions that can help you begin to come up with ideas. What if questions really open up your imagination when you say, well, what if we tried X, or what if we combined the way we're doing this over here with this other approach that seems totally unrelated? What if we put them together? So what if is a really great way to just ideate and to create and to brainstorm. And then the last kind of questioning I talk about is how. And how questions are very practical, action-oriented questions. So, you kind of go from why, which is exploring possibilities, to what if, which is really starting to come up with ideas. And somewhere along the line, you want to get to how. You want to get to how are we going to start to do this? How do we take the first steps? How might we experiment with this idea? How might we prototype it? How might we test it and learn? So I think that is a very logical flow that takes people from kind of speculative questioning to action-oriented questioning. And that's really important. Everyone says to me, particularly in the business world, people always say to me, well, if you start asking a lot of questions, don't you just get paralyzed and you end up not doing anything because you're just questioning everything, and that's a big fear that business people have about questioning. But what I say is, if you approach questioning the right way and you make sure your questions are always moving forward, that they're always trying to take a step further along the path towards doing something, then questioning becomes very action-oriented by the end. I mean, you can end up using questions to actually lead you to get things done. So that whole structure is very important, and that whole approach to questioning. That's what the third section of the book lays out. That's the why, what if, and how of innovative questioning. And then the fourth of the 5 sections in the book, I really zero in on business. It's just called Questioning in Business, and it's all about taking some of the principles I've just laid out in the second section and just saying, how does this apply specifically to business, and how does it apply to your business, and why is questioning suddenly so important in business? What are the reasons for that? So I think that this is the chapter where you really kind of zero in on the kinds of questions businesses need to be asking. Companies, I feel like today companies, things are changing so fast that whatever business you're in, you have to always be questioning that business. In effect, you should be asking yourself all the time, what business am I really in? Because the business you were in yesterday might not be the business you're in today, because everything may have changed all around you just overnight. So I think in this chapter, I really lay out some of the questions that businesses need to be asking and some of the reasons they need to be asking so many questions. Eventually, I get into some areas in this section like, can you use questioning as a form of brainstorming? Which is really interesting. And some businesses are starting to do that. They're starting to realize that, if you structure your brainstorming sessions around asking questions, it can actually be more productive than having people throw out ideas. Just because people are more comfortable asking questions. They don't feel as vulnerable. And questions just fire the imagination. So we're finding that it's a really good brainstorming technique. And then one of the last things I say in the business section, and this has kind of gotten a lot of attention since the book came out in the business world, is it's created some interest and discussion. And I say that I actually believe that questions are so powerful that I think companies should think about having mission questions instead of mission statements, because a mission question around a company's goals is going to be more engaging to people than a statement. It's more open-ended and it's more inviting to your employees to participate and help you answer the question. So if a company says, a company can phrase its mission question as, how might we be the best X, Y, or Z? Instead of declaring, we are the best X, Y, Z in the world. If you put it out there, if you put your mission out there as a question, it's less arrogant and it's more inviting to people. It says to your various collaborators and employees and partners, it says we're on a mission. And it's an open-ended mission, and we hope to answer this question. And hopefully you can help us do it. So that's pretty much the business section. Then the last section of the book, I kind of tie all this into. I step outside of business and I tie a lot of this to your daily life, because I really think a lot of these principles of questioning apply just as much in your life as they do in business. You really, all of us are trying to achieve goals and get places in our life and deal with issues that maybe we haven't thought about enough. And so what I talk about in the book is, in this chapter of the book, is that you can use questioning to start to deal with some of those issues in your life that maybe you've been avoiding thinking about. Maybe you just have sort of been too busy to really take the time to step back and ask fundamental questions about, am I on the right path, or in my career, or why am I living in the town I'm in, and is this really where I want to be? So in that section, I really talk about how you can use deep questioning and smart questioning to sort of deal with issues in your life. And I wrap up the book finally by making the case that all of us should have a beautiful question, one big question that we pursue in our lives. It could be some goal you want to achieve or something you've always been interested in. But you put it out there as a question: how might I do this or that thing? And you pursue it over time. It's a thing that can motivate you and lead you along. So that's pretty much where I end the book, on that note of find your beautiful question, and very, very positive, kind of uplifting message at the end, and that's it. And then the last thing is that the book, something interesting I did in the back of the book is, most people have an index of facts in the back of the book, and I have an index that's entirely questions, and it's about 400 questions that are embedded within the book. So all kinds of questions, business questions, life questions, that kind of thing.
Excellent.
So that's it. Yeah.
Warren, that was a great review. I appreciate you taking us through the book. And that's what makes this next question so difficult, I believe. And it's, if the reader can only take one concept or principle or action item out of your entire book, what would you want that to be?
Well, I think the most important principle has to do with the value of questions, because we all tend to, or a lot of us tend to undervalue questions. We think the real value lies in the answers. And so if there's one idea that I'd like you to take out of this, it's that questions may be just as important as the answers. And in fact, there's some evidence to suggest that the value of questions is continuing to rise today as the value of questions is declining. As the value of answers is declining. The reason being that, when you're in a time of rapid change, the answers that you have for various problems and ways of doing things, they quickly become obsolete or outdated. So you're always having to update what you know and your solutions, your approaches. You're always having to adapt and learn new ways. And questioning is what helps you do that. Questioning is what helps you continuously bring in new knowledge, new approaches, new ways of doing things. It continuously helps you solve problems. So the one principle I really would want people to take out of this is that questioning is much more valuable than you think it is. And in some ways, the questions matter just as much as the answers.
Okay, excellent. Warren, do you have a favorite quote from your book? And if you don't have one that you've personally selected, is there one that's maybe resonated with your audience so far?
There's two that have been talked about a lot. One is it originated. It's a quote that originated in Silicon Valley a couple of years ago, where they have taken to saying that questions are the new answers. And I love that line, and I think it's really true. Particularly in Silicon Valley, where so many of the great companies and the billion-dollar startups began with a question. So the idea is what they believe out there is that if you can come up with the right question, you've got it made. So, or at least you're on your way. Let's put it that way. You're on your way to something good. So that's one line that I really love, and another line is a little more education related, and it's been getting a lot of traction since I first said it. But I said that what I would say to students in school today is that knowing the answers will help you in school, but knowing how to ask questions will help you in life, and I think that's a big part of the message of this book. So those are the two lines that I think are kind of the most powerful that are coming out of the book. Okay,
great. So we can already tell that your book is one that's going to help create a paradigm shift for a lot of people who are focusing on the answers and maybe not the questions. And that's why I'd like to ask you this next question, which is if you could recommend a book, another book that could create a paradigm shift for our listeners the way it did for you, what would you want that to be?
I'd like to mention a couple things. First of all, I always like to mention Peter Drucker, because I think that Peter Drucker, to me, laid the groundwork for a lot of the ways we think about business today. And I think his ideas are incredibly relevant today, even though a lot of his stuff was written 40 years ago or whatever. But it's incredibly relevant stuff. And Drucker, by the way, was very big on questioning. He believed that these companies used to come to Drucker, Coca-Cola, and all these big companies and say, tell us what to do. You're the guru of business. Give us the answer. And Drucker would always say to them, my job isn't to give you the answer. My job is to help you find the answer by asking the right questions and helping you ask the right questions. So I'm a big believer in Drucker, and I think you can't go wrong with any of his books, or you could get the Essential Drucker, which kind of boils a lot of his ideas together, and that's a good one to check out. But so that's one, and then I was very influenced by The Art of Innovation by Tom Kelly of IDEO. I think that that book is a great book for anyone who wants to understand some of the fundamentals of innovation. Before everybody was writing innovation books, IDEO was at the forefront of this kind of thinking, and they laid out some of the basics of innovation and design thinking, and it's relevant to anyone in business, anyone doing a startup. You don't have to be a designer. You don't have to be any of those things. It's relevant to anyone who is trying to be an innovator in business. So I like that a lot. And then most recently, the book that's influenced me a lot is the book Give and Take by Adam Grant. And I just think that's a fantastic book. And I think that it has a very important message for people in the business world and in their careers. Basically, that if you help people, it actually helps you to become more successful. And if you give of yourself in business, and you do small favors and maybe not so small favors for others in the world around you and in the business world around you, it will actually help you to be more successful yourself. And it's a radical notion, but I think it's absolutely true. And so I'm a big believer in that, and I just think it's a great concept and a great book.
Excellent. Well, Warren, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to get more information on you, the other books that you were talking about that you've written, and A More Beautiful Question?
Yeah, it's basically, you can get all of that at the main website, amorebeautifulquestion.com. And that will introduce you to basically this whole world of questioning. There's a lot of great little articles and tidbits in there that are, some of them from the book and some of them from other sources. But it's a great place to get started in learning a little bit about the importance of questioning. And there's even you can even take a little inquiry test on there to see what kind of a questioner you are. So it's a fun site too.
Okay, excellent. Well, Warren, thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate your time.
Great. It was great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks again for listening in today. If you'd like to get your hands on A More Beautiful Question or any of the other resources mentioned by Warren, just look at the show notes at the elpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.